Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. Barry Bryson here. It's dark outside. I've had to bump up the lighting in my office to talk to you today, and I apologize if I blind you with the glare off of my head. We're in the Gospel of Mark. We're finishing up chapter 4 today, and Jesus has spent time teaching in parables, teaching us how to read parables, and sharing so many lifelong lessons. I mean, keep going back to Mark chapter 4, Matthew chapter 13, Luke chapter 15, pondering the parables that Jesus shares, because they are, I would describe them as sustainable. Of course, all the word is, but these stories are not just one-offs, and where we can put them down and say, oh, I get it. They continue to feed us. We're going to enter into a series of events now, miracles in the life of Jesus that will culminate in the first resurrection story, where Jesus, for the first time in his ministry, raises the dead. And Mark, in the same way that he has arranged the stories of the devolution of Jesus' relationship with the Pharisees in a series of vignettes, we have a grouping of events, of miracle events, that begin with the stilling of the storm and that reach climax in the raising of Jairus' daughter, in which we have the theme throughout of fear. And in every one of these events, the word fear is used. But the fear, and there are fearful things that happen. I mean, everyone is a story about fear. There's the stilling of the storm, the terrible storm. There is the confrontation with Legion, which is as frightening a person, I think, as we meet in Scripture. There is the fear of the woman, who was completely unclean in the crowd, who comes just to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. And then there's the greatest of all fears, the fear that your child will die. And Jesus, in every instance, conquers those things that are fearful. And in every one of these passages, the word fear is not used until after the frightful thing has been defeated. The fear is used of the calm. The fear is used of what people feel about Jesus, because he's stronger than the things that frighten them. The calm of Jesus produces greater fear than the threat that Jesus overcame. And every one of these stories, and that in itself, these are like lived parables. That in itself is a lesson. We're being taught to the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of knowledge, the beginning of wisdom, and the understanding that this man from Nazareth is the Son of God and is Lord, the Lord whom we fear. So anyway, let's read chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go over to the other side. And leaving the multitude, they took him along with them, just as he was there in the boat, and other boats were with them. And there arose a fierce gale of wind, and the waves were breaking up over the boat so much that the boat was already filling up. And he himself was in the stern, asleep on a cushion, and they awoke, and they woke him up, and they said to him, Teacher, don't you care that we're perishing? And being aroused, he rebuked the wind and said, Hush, be still. And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, Why are you so timid? Why are you so afraid? Excuse me. How is it that you have no faith? And they became very much afraid, and said to one another, Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Such a vivid account. I mean, it's just Mark and probably Peter, just continues to amaze us as a storyteller. This is the shortest account of this event, and yet we get so much detail. And let's just think about this detail. He's already in the boat, and instead of coming back to shore, they just go off to the other side. There are other boats with him. We only get that detail in Mark. He's asleep with his head on the seat cushion in the back of the boat through all this. We're told that he's asleep in the other accounts, but we're told what it looked like. He's there with his head on the cushion, with his head on the seat cushion, and we can picture that. And then that he has to be aroused from sleep. How you don't wake up. He's not jumping up. I mean, they have to wake him up, and he has to be aroused from sleep. And it's just so vivid the way Mark, perhaps Peter, tells this story. And then, the fierce gales, were they God sent? In one way or the other, of course. The Sea of Galilee is very far below sea level. It's not as low as the Dead Sea, but it is below sea level, 700 feet below sea level. And therefore, these strong winds, warm winds, rush down from the coast, but because heat rises, then they rise again. And so these kinds of windstorms are not unknown or uncommon on the Sea of Galilee. So anyway, and Peter knows this better than anyone, if he is indeed the source. They know about this. They're all frightened. They all know, especially the fishermen among them, how easily they could die in the Sea of Galilee at this point. But Jesus is asleep. And one asks, how can he sleep in the middle of all this? I mean, with the rocking of the boat and everything. Well, I think there are a couple of answers. One is, you can get that tired that you sleep through anything. And I think we see the humanity of Jesus and just how exhausted he is by this pace that he keeps every day. And there's another reason. One is he knows he's not going to drown on the Sea of Galilee. He knows that's not how he's going to die. And so he's not afraid of this, So he is, this is not a Garden of Gethsemane moment. He's completely confident, falling asleep in this boat. And, if Hollywood were to film this, and the times Hollywood has filmed this, it's almost like Charlton Heston as Moses, parting the Red Sea. It's peace, be still. The Andrew Scorby, recording of the New Testament, reading of the New Testament, which is so majestic and which I love. That's how he communicates it. But that's not what's said at all. This is like a parent being woken up in the morning and telling their kids to go back to bed. Do you know what time it is? He is emphatic. There are exclamation marks. He says, hush, stop it, to the winds, like the wind is an unruly child. And immediately, the very second that he says it, calm. And that is scarier than the storm. And Jesus says, why are you this way? Why are you so timid? But you've been with me. Why is this a surprise to you? Don't you know who I am yet? Jesus is so nonplussed by their he's just almost surprised at their lack of faith, at their panic. Don't you care? What a question is that to ask Jesus? Don't you care? And then they're afraid. Well, that's the first in this series. We'll talk about the next one next time. Thank you for joining me for 5 good minutes.